All right. Well, happy Wednesday, everyone. My name is Jeremy Elder. I'm a staff product designer and I'm on the design system team in Foundations. And the last time I presented, it was on uh, dark mode again, or this is again, I guess, but just in regards to where we were at in the process. At that time, we were exploring design direction, we were exploring design token concepts, and in the last several months, we've come a long way. And today, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're actually implementing it into the product. And the goal is to take dark mode from experimentation to beta, and beta is loaded with the fact that at that point, all teams are responsible for it. And so I want to just emphasize that what our goal is really to set teams up for success, set us all up for success as we work through implementing dark mode, not only in design, but also product for users. And so we've done that in two ways. We've partnered with groups directly where members of the design system team are doing evaluations and partnering with those teams to implement changes. And then we've also created a playbook for other teams to do self-help, self-assessment, and work through a similar process. So you might have experienced this already. It might be coming soon. So just keep an eye out for that. And the design system, it covers a lot of ground, but there's still a lot of gaps. There's still styles that come in from different places, overrides, custom styles, and whatnot. So while the design system aims to be 100% in support of dark mode, that doesn't mean that all the product will until we work through getting design tokens and styling set up. The main intent of dark mode and this effort is just to make sure that the UI transitions seamlessly between light and dark mode, and that means that intent and design stays similar. So if something is subtle in light mode, it should be subtle in dark. And also, excuse me, make sure we have sufficient contrast, meet our accessibility goals. Our initial focus is on high traffic pages in each of the groups, so covering large surface area of the product. And, and yeah, so let's go into just a high level. Here's what the epic looks like. It's linked in the document. You can probably find your group listed. So we have the primary epic, what the process is, sub epic for each group, and then under those the issues that we've found based on findings. Uh, so take a look at those. For example, and let's see here, I'll jump over to the playbook and then I'll just go into an evaluation. My goal today is just to really show what my process is so that if you've gone through this before, you understand it better. And if you're going to go through this, you have a sense of what that looks like. So the team, we created this dark mode rollout playbook. It's on the handbook, linked in the doc. And this is a step-by-step guide for teams to go through the same process that we're going through with a focus on understanding what design tokens are, how the design system relates, what are dark mode preferences in GitLab, how do you get help, and then the main part of this is the evaluation. So the primary goal again is just to make sure that most of your pages are configured properly for dark mode and can adapt not only today but also for future changes. So if things change with design tokens, etc., that your section of the product receives those changes downstream and those changes propagate like intended. And when we achieve these goals, as highlighted, there are three primary benefits: more cohesive, consistent product experience, more seamless propagation of design system updates, and then overall confidence to move dark mode beyond beta to general availability. And so tools that we're using, I'll demonstrate a few of these, but there's a hot pink bookmarklet. The reason it's called hot pink is because we don't have that color in our palette today. And so we're able to highlight elements that are not using the correct styles and easily identify them, do like some visual regression testing. There's a highlighter Chrome extension that gets a little more into the code so that we can kind of look under the hood a little bit. Also using Claude to run through code and paste in things and get some feedback on uh, things we might not pick up on visually. And then for any components that are using Vue, there is a DevTools browser extension that you can look at. So the steps, I'll just you can read it in the playbook yourself, but I'll kind of walk through what I've done in the environments group. Oh, by the way, here's what those tools look like. So here's the highlighter bookmarklet. I'll show that in a second. And then there's a plugin like a browser extension. And yeah, I'll demonstrate those. All right, so dark mode environments group. Uh, we've set up a sub epic here, and there's a process, high level process. And the first part of this is collecting key pages that we're going to review for the team and evaluate. Myself, I evaluated it from a visual design, front of the front end kind of perspective. And then I believe Scott is going to do the same, but from more of a development perspective so that we can come at it both visually and programmatically to make sure we catch everything. We engaged with the team, got a list of the top 5 pages, and figured out how do we test these in GDK? What configuration do we need? Are there live links that show more content? We walked through figuring out if there's any behavior that we need to address from a responsive standpoint, where elements are shown or hidden, interactive states, etc. So covering a lot of ground there to identify those elements. We linked them in the description. And from there, what I do is build out basically a page, a file in Figma where I can capture the results of my side of the evaluation. Uh, every one of these files has a README and a link back to the epic. It follows the dark mode rollout playbook. And the goal here is just to take screenshots and identify and annotate things that we have found. And there's 3 categories for those findings. There's ideas for existing pajama solutions. So, hey, this is using this style. Maybe it should use this one instead. Things like that. Things that have bespoke solutions, maybe. So maybe it's like a custom component, custom control, and working together to figure out like what design tokens might fit this today. How can we think about this? Does it need to be a component, et cetera? And then the last category is paper cut items, things that as we're going through these audits, maybe don't relate directly to dark mode, but other things that could be fixed are focused on those, the last two, the bespoke and paper cuts. We've kind of taken down the focus on that just so that we can keep moving towards the dark mode. So, all right. So here's one page in Figma, and it looks messy. There's a lot of annotations here. It looks messy here. Let me zoom in here. That will, oh, doesn't want to do that for me. Hold on a second. There we go. So this is basically just a capture of the page with elements highlighted in hot pink. So how did I get there? I've got this page pulled up in live in prod. And first step that I do is run what I call CSI mode. It's the bookmarklet. So it's basically just inspecting and highlighting anything in hot pink that might be offending. So I turn that on, refresh the page, and now I've got hot pink showing up in a few places. This indicates to me that these are parts of the page that are not using design tokens. And indeed, if I inspect this, I can see background color is set to the white variable. Well, white is not a design token. It's not going to change per mode. There might be some other overrides that are happening to allow this to change, but it's not directly going to be using design tokens. So for sure, that is an example of that. Highlights in here, interactive states. I can see that this delete pod is not using design tokens. So there's things like that that we'll uncover as we go through this. If I click on one of these, notice there's a little marker here and this little background strip here. So without going into too much of the detail, just going through all the interactive stuff, anything in the page that might stand out, capturing those in screenshots in Figma, and then going through the annotations. So that's one level of annotating. That's more of the visual side. The next would be to go in from a little more of a code perspective. So using the highlighter extension or yeah, browser extension, We could type in different class names, things that we're looking for, just to make sure, like, are these really using components correctly? Are they using the right styles? So once I enable this, you can see I've got a set of these things already pre-populated. It highlights all of these elements on the page. So, okay, that is indeed, using badges. It's indeed using the buttons as expected. It's using items with GL text, and I can clear all of these and add them, etc. That's another way to investigate and pick up on things quickly. And also those would be captured in any annotations here, the different states, etc. And then the annotating, dropping these in. So simply, like for one here, it's just the background of these items and the text aren't using design tokens. So going back to that team, it's up to them to decide what tokens should they be? What is the intent here? Are these subtle elements, strong elements? What's the goal? Can we, what design tokens are applicable to this thing? We can help the team identify that. Just an example of a paper cut might be like these badges where the alignment of the icon's not correct. It's using wrong size of icons for status. This one's actually using a loading symbol in there. So lots of things like that. And then one more method that I do is with Claude. So like a simple prompt, list out all elements with the CSS class that don't include .gl hyphen. And this is coming at it from another angle. And so Claude lists out, I paste in the source code of the page. It lists out all the elements in the page and their different styles that aren't using that. And then I can evaluate like, oh, okay, these are just JavaScript, functional classes, or these are coming from our components. So it's another way to just come at this and make sure that everything in the page uh, is aligning with that. So that's really all there is to it. It's it's pretty straightforward, and that's our process right now. I could go a lot deeper into a lot of this, but just with respect to time, I'm not going to. But I wanted to emphasize again that once this transitions to beta, like all teams are going to be responsible for this. And that's just really critical so that like that you can own it. And how do you check it? How do you evaluate it? How are you going to do QA? And it'll be responsible for those teams to maintain it moving forward. And the other thing to note is that this is like really easy to test today. In Figma, if you're using components and whatnot, you just need to change your view mode. If you're using the design uh, token library and components, you just need to change the view mode of your existing design. You don't have to design it twice. You can design it once, switch mode, test those things. Likewise, in the browser, it's pretty easy if you're in here. For me, I'm just going to switch to the other mode. If you're using developer tools, you can pop this open. This one is Chromium, but there's a little ability here. I could switch to light mode really quickly. I don't have to go back to the preferences and do that and whatnot. So it's really easy to test the color schemes and et cetera and go through that. So I'd encourage you to do that as well. And with that, I will stop sharing.
The first question is from Austin.
Thanks, Jeremy, for the overview. This may have already been covered, and I'm just still trying to catch up to speed. But something I'm trying to understand myself as I'm like, running around with this pink highlighter all over my GitLab instance to just get a feel for where these things are. I commonly come across areas where it looks like it's just a class that's being applied on top of the element that seems to be the violation. So I'm just going to pick on one that I was happened to be on the page for. The resolve threads button has a background color of orange. And you could theoretically just swap it out with GL BG subtle, and that would technically pass the highlighter test. I'm not saying that's what we should do. What I'm trying to understand is like, how do I find the classes, or like what's the nomenclature that I could follow that would be the appropriate thing that uses the underlying design token? I shared the snippet from the CSS in the doc to show like the differences in the underlying structure. Maybe that's where you can see like the tokens in the BG subtle, but like I don't really know. I'm just adding a class to the file that, oh, there's an underlying token to this, or there isn't one?
That's a fantastic question. And one of the ones we actually discussed this, and this element, I could find the reference to this exact one and show you how we went about solving for this exact use case. I'll pull that up in a minute. But
Cool.
uh, the if I understand it right, you're wondering like, what do I replace Orange 50 with? Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, I get if I theoretically wanted to keep the same intent,
Yeah.
or if I wanted to explore my options of what's a safe thing to put in there for size of substitution.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what I would do, and Dan and others feel free to jump in. Let me go ahead and I'll share quick again if we have if, Chris, let me know if I need to cut myself off here. I will.
Got about 2 minutes.
Okay. I would start by going to your pajamas, and hopefully pajamas doesn't load like this for you. But I would start by going to pajamas and looking at what design tokens are available. Something like this, if it's using Orange 50, okay, that clues me in that there's some type of a warning thing happening, right? So I would probably look at, okay, I'm going to search for warning, and I'm in the design token directory. What design tokens would apply? I know that this is using the variable, uh, the CSS variable. So this format here is like the default format. So what I would do is I'm looking for CSS. Like what is this going to be? Oh, okay. Now we've got var GL badge warning. Now I'm starting to get somewhere. I see these orange ones. Well, this isn't a badge. Okay, it's not an alert. Um, like what is this thing? And so looking through this, it's like I would well status. Okay, like here's a description of status. Here's the background color for this. This is in uh, light mode right here. You can change it to dark if you want to see what the output would be. So I would go through this and say, like, is this status? Is it feedback? Like, what is the intent that we're trying to do? And start to narrow in on that. And this alone would be like what you would aim to replace that with. Like, okay, it's a background color. We know that let's just say it's status. It's warning us that there's something that needs resolved. Okay, and go from there. So that would be my process and recommendation.
Okay, so I think if I'm hearing you right, I'm highlighting a specific section in the doc. You're saying go to the underlying CSS class, replace what is in the variable slot with one of those design tokens instead of using, dash dash orange dash 50, put in the design token. You can leave the class name as is, just replace the token underneath it.
Yeah. Okay. So
Okay.
I'm back in the document and I see like you have GLBG Orange 50. That's what you're referencing.
Yeah.
So that's where going back to let's just see here. I'll share this and then we can wrap up. That's where I would say, okay, this is, maybe CSS, maybe there's something I need to use that's a little more direct. And that's where we get into like some of the Tailwind utilities and
Hmm.
those options. And I won't show those here, but I can link you to those. So that's another thing that we're trying to figure out with the team is like, how do we communicate how these things need to be applied depending on the context? Like, is it within a class? Is it within a component? Is it just using a utility? So that you can pick the right thing. And I don't feel like we have the decision tree nailed down quite yet. And that's one of the things we're working through as we've been partnering with teams is identifying like how do we communicate like what thing to reach for. So this is a good question and one that'll help kind of inform that. So
Sure. Yeah, no, it's definitely helpful at least to see you walk through the design token directory and JAMA. So thanks.
I think if you've got questions about this, you can always follow up inside of the design systems Slack channel and consult the broader team about this. All right. Thanks, Jeremy.